Well, I was born in 1919, so I remember quite a bit about it. However, I was the youngest of six, so of course I got my older brothers and sisters made sure that I had what I wanted usually, because they all had little chores and little jobs, trying to make money to help mother. But we had a sort of a dairy farm. We had few cows. We had a nice garden and chickens, and my mother was we peddled milk. I peddled milk, and we charged a nickel a quart for milk. And sometimes the people couldn't even pay that but they had babies and children that they had to have it. So my mom would say, "Well, we're delivering the milk to them anyhow." And the milk was in glass bottles. And I remember one time that I was in the car with my oldest brother, who's 18 years older, and we were going around the curve. I had an armload of those milk bottles that were glass, and the door came open, and I fell out in the street with all those glass milk bottles that we had collected along the way. And of course, we had to come home and sterilize the bottles, but we didn't have plastic or those things that you can recycle. And it was just, and I remember that my mother, we'd always have dinner together in the evening, and sometimes we wouldn't have anything but maybe mush and milk and maybe some bread of some kind. And my older brothers, they loved, my mother made homemade bread, but my older brothers, they loved it. Once in a while, Mom could get bread loaves for $3 for a quarter, and they would eat every bit of that bread because they said it tasted like cake. But the Depression it was bad, but we always had something to eat on the table. And often my mom would say she didn't know if she could make ends meet, meaning she couldn't wonder if she could make the expenses meet with the money that she had to use. But she was a worker and a wonderful, wonderful person. And I do remember going to school, and I would look across the street. I had several blocks I usually had to walk to school, and I would see these long lines with the little tin buckets. Well, I asked my mom what that was, and she said, "Well, you know, they're waiting for their soup." They had a soup line in our little town in northeastern Oklahoma, and they would bring their buckets so they could at least get a little bit of hot soup for their meal. But I was so sorry and wanted to help as much as I could. But I was just such a little girl that it just I didn't realize how bad it was. Well, we were not, in my county, which was Ottawa County, Oklahoma, the black or the colored, were not even allowed there after sunset. But I do remember seeing them along our Highway 66 went right through the middle of our little town. And my little girlfriend her daddy had a gas station, and we would hang around at her house, which is across the street from the gas station, and I would see the chauffeurs come through there and usually it was the Indians, because they were the ones who had the wealth. And the Indians had the big Cadillacs and the big cars when they first came out, and the chauffeurs would get out to maintain and get gasoline for the car and would get any needs that the people needed. But usually it was the Indians in northeastern Oklahoma who had gotten their share, of course, of the land. But that's the only black people I ever saw. And my grandmother lived in the Edds of Kansas, which was about 30 miles north and east. And I would go up there, and that they, of course, allowed there in Kansas. And I did see my first black people in Baxter Springs, Kansas.